As you know, the F1 entity works with the F2 on the environment, the greening EU cooperation for the integration of integrated environment and climate change into agriculture and food system. So in all the action of cooperation. So I will quickly speak about the history of that. So as you can see, for 2014-2020, out of 57 billion euros that have been involved, the money that has been put in by the DG INTPA, there was the DG had said that they would spend 20% of those funds on the climate change action. In terms of biodiversity, we are at 5.2% of commitments. On the more political markers, aid to environment, we are 25.3%. So you can see here that for climate change, we are at 21.1% with an increase since 2014, with a follow-up that is done by the facility to help you in the delegation to do the scoring. So we do that at the decision level, not yet at the control level. So when some action contribute to adaptation, we take the highest score. Next slide. So you can see here that in terms of mitigation, the sectors that are contributing the most are the energy sector with 65%, and of course, agriculture and food security and rural development at 16%. And in terms of adaptation, we have mainly the water supply and sanitation, and agriculture, food security and rural development for 46%. Next slide. So that's another way to represent those contributions. So you can see the climate change contributions by overall. On the biodiversity, we can see that there is only a 5.2% of money contributions. So there is still a lot of effort to be done within that area and take more biodiversity into account in political decisions. You can see here the contribution by sector for biodiversity, with agriculture 12%, and then you've got the rest, and which general environmental protection, obviously, it's like dedicated program to environment. So obviously, it's a higher contribution. And you can see that about 25% of all climate finance that contribute to climate also contribute to biodiversity, and 65% of action contributing to biodiversity also contribute to climate actions. So this is really important to find the opportunities for co-benefits as soon as possible and find solutions, obviously. So on commitments, I was mentioning 30% of the climate target. For the NDIC Global Europe 2021-2027, we have a 30% commitment with, so that's the target for the climate. And we, by September, the State of the Union by our President Ursula von der Leyen, she mentioned that 44 billion would be added for that for climate commitments. So we are now above the 30%. On biodiversity, she added a complement of the funds dedicated to biodiversity. And in NDIC, we had one of 7.5% for 2024 and 10% for 2026. Next slide. So how do we do those commitments? We organize webinars, and we have one specific in December on biomarkers, because we think it's very important that all our colleagues know about it and have an awareness of those biomarkers. And they are sometimes mentioned in action documents. So those biomarkers and those have been created by the OECD with by the Development System Committee to develop those conventions. We can have different actions that do not target or do not target in a tangible way biodiversity or the fight against global warming. So obviously we avoid negative effects, that's obvious on biodiversity, but there are actions that do not justify to have a marker. If we have a target to an objective that significantly contributes, then we have an RM1, and we consider that 40% of the budget is dedicated to increase biodiversity. If the main objective is that's the fundamental objective and the motivation for the action, then we consider that 100% of the budget of the action is contributing to increasing biodiversity. Next slide. To help you how to design your actions, F1 and F2 have developed strategies to include climates in your project, in particular in the agriculture and food systems programs. So you will have informations and documents in documents that Helen is preparing for you, but we are trying to find answers to the question how to achieve food security, but also contribute to limit climate change and promote biodiversity. So we need co-benefits. So we can see that we align with agroecology in terms of the principles. I'm not going over all the tips that are on that slide. You can read them, but you can see that agroecology really helps with all of that. Next slide. What's important, obviously, is, as Alain was mentioning, to be coherent in terms of practice and have a systemic approach from the agroecosystem, landscapes, and so on. It's not just tick, 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 tick. It's how can we actually contribute to the climate and biodiversity. We also have a document with activities, a document to help you calculate the impact of your activities. Next slide. So there are documents that exist. I'm just going quickly over them just to show you examples of activities that are helping with biodiversity. Again, same from biomarkers on the next slide to help with climate change. So that's in the next slide. Can we move to the next slide? And And also, so that's the one on the activities to help with biomarkers. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So if you need help, go to mainstreaming, also register on the group capacity for dev.eu. And there is a new facility, the EU NDC Global Facility, that just been implemented to help you at national level. And I'm following that. So you can contact me to know more about that.